Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tackling Basketball Podcast. My name is Evan,
I'm Jonathan.
and we have a lot of stuff to get through here today. We, of course, have our normal segments, our GOAT and Dick of the Weeks, our 100 units and 10,001 betting segment, and then we'll pretty much be focusing on all things NBA because why the heck not? So let's get right into it. Jonathan, who is your GOAT of the week?
Well, my goat of the week is the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I debated between a few different teams for this one, but I think that for the Oklahoma City Thunder to have a season very shortly after trading away most of their top talent to acquire a whole lot of young assets and draft capital, to be able to make even the play-in tournament is just a huge success, a huge testament to the fight in their young talent as well as their abilities on the court. So, I mean, it is a little bit scary for both of us, I think, having this team in our division because they are set up so well for the future and they have all of the pieces to find moderate success right now. So I think that they absolutely won the week by being able to stave off the Dallas Mavericks and hold on to that play-in spot.
Yeah, for sure. And then my go to the week, the Utah Jazz, who I think are essentially just the Oklahoma City Thunder, but 1 year behind. Because this past offseason traded away Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, they're big guys for a lot of youth, a lot of draft picks. And I think, I mean, and the reason I said that they're the GOAT this week is even though they didn't make playoffs this year, they showed a lot of promise. A lot of the young guys they traded for, Lauri Markkanen looked very good. Colin Sexton, who, while he's not by any means an all-star caliber point guard, at least not right now, still a very good piece to have on your team. And they, of course, have all that draft capital. So I think they are sitting right where they should be during a rebuild with their youth looking good, youth having a lot of potential, and then now they're going to get into all these draft picks and start building.
It's such an interesting division, the Northwest Conference or division, and it's just as a basketball fan really excited to see how these different strategies from these different teams pan out because you've got the Utah Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunder who are both doing really big rebuilds right now, acquiring a bunch of capital. You have the Minnesota Timberwolves who are trying to acquire Rudy Gobert. We'll talk a little bit soon about different trades that happened throughout the season, but Rudy Gobert and just trying to push for a championship with two big men. And then you have the Nuggets who are trying to continue to grow really organically without as much draft capital anymore. And then you have the Blazers who, I mean, we all know what they're trying to do. Evan, right?
Sure. We'll just say yes so that I don't start to cry.
But yeah, let's.
All right. Well, with that, yeah, let's get over. Who is your Dick of the week?
Oh my gosh, dude! Like, I did not think after our last couple of weeks talking about them a little bit that they could possibly sink any lower. But holy cow, the Dallas Mavericks are just completely a mess right now. I mean, you have them falling out of playoffs, which on its own is a massive deal because as we discussed last week, they were the 4 seed when Kyrie Irving joined them. And they've fallen out of the play-in tournament, not even a chance to make playoffs right now. But beyond that, you now have an investigation starting to be launched into whether or not like ownership or coaching or front office intentionally missed playoffs in order to improve their draft capital. And it's not out of the realm of possibilities, given that we had Steve Nash come out and say that, like, he I forget the exact quote, but he basically didn't deny that they were more future oriented, like looking towards next season with that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have their owner, Mark Cuban, saying, yeah, we can't control what the players want to do. So that's like, you can't really tank if you can't control the players. Well, you can if you don't play them.
Yeah.
And he's already gotten fined. Mark Cuban has in 2018 for intentional tanking. And that just opens up the floodgates for the possibility of losing draft assets or other things. So, depending on how this investigation goes, their season can turn from a disaster into just despair.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, it's been a rough past couple months for the Dallas Mavericks.
It's so weird. It's insane. So, moving on from that, Evan, who's your dick?
And I know. As a baseball fan, we started this podcast. I promised I wouldn't talk about baseball too much, and I've been trying really hard. But after the A's AA affiliate, the Trash Pandas, collapse that occurred this weekend, I'm sorry, I just can't help myself. So the Trash Pandas, A's AA team, like I said, so on AA level, they only play 7-inning games. Or maybe it was because they were doing a doubleheader that day and they did 7-inning games. Going into the 7th inning, Trash Pandas were up 5-0, and the Trash Pandas wound up finishing the game with a combined no-hitter, which for non-baseball fans, that means you have multiple pitchers enter the game. Nobody got a hit. Good for them. However, they wound up losing 7-5 because in the 7th inning, their pitching staff gave up 5 walks, beamed 4 guys. The right fielder dropped a pop fly with the bases loaded, which let 3 runs score, and then another run scored on a pass ball, but to the catcher. Quite possibly the most ridiculous and devastating collapse at the end of a baseball game I have ever heard or witnessed.
It's impressive
in my life.
I mean,
and if I would assume that the pitcher who beamed 4 guys is probably now at single A, or maybe no longer has a job,
right.
Or the right fielder may be benched now. But I mean, that is absurd. And chatting with some of our buddies, I mean, we were talking about the fact that, like, I'm not even sure I've seen that at like the high school level. I mean, that is a whole different level of collapse. So the Trash Panda is absolutely the dick of the week.
It's so rare to lose a no-hitter on its own, but to lose a no-hitter when you were up by 5 runs in the final inning is just insane.
With that, we will now move into what Jonathan alluded to earlier. Going to go through the biggest trades of the 2022-2023 season. Obviously, some are bigger than others. We omitted a lot from the list just because there's a lot of trades that, if we're being honest, don't really matter, didn't move the needle whatsoever in the grand scheme of things. So we're just leaving them off. But got quite a list here, so we're going to try and get through them as quickly as possible. But starting out pretty darn hot, with the Hawks receiving DeJounte Murray and Jock Landale, while the Spurs received Danilo Gallinari, 2023 first, 2025 first, 2026 pick swap, and a 2027 first. Jonathan, from at the time of the trade, what did you think to now? How do you think it went for both parties?
You know, I didn't know what to think. DeJounte Murray was pretty hard for me to evaluate leading into this trade, and I know that he had just a fantastic season in 2021-2022, so the trade made sense as far as what was given up to me. I think that most people involved in this trade might be a little bit disappointed with where the Hawks finished this season at the 8th seed right now, fighting for their play-in lives. But this is one of those ones that it could go either way for me. A solid trade on both sides. Maybe slightly too many firsts given up for DeJounte, but what's your opinion here?
I'm probably in about the same boat. I was a bit confused at the time on the Spurs end concerning the fact that they're clearly trying to rebuild, but DeJounte's only
Yeah.
25 years old, so it felt a little bit weird. But ultimately, they got four future first round picks, so I kind of get it. And then I would definitely agree. I think the Hawks probably expected more, but at the same time, if they were expecting more, that when you put Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, two ball dominant guards together, tends to not work out perfectly, as we have seen across multiple
Yeah.
teams, Dallas Mavericks. So it definitely disappointed for the Hawks, but at the same time, DeJounte still had a good season. So I think it winds out being a pretty even trade for both sides.
All right. All
With
right.
that, we'll move to the next big one.
I forgot that
Got
that was this offseason, this trade, until I saw it
yeah,
like in this review session.
I I know I forgot a lot of these trades happened this offseason.
Like I could have
But the
sworn this was 2
Pistons,
years ago.
yeah, Pistons receiving Gabriel Vasita for and a 2025 Milwaukee first, 2025 Detroit second, and 2026 second, while Blazers receive Jeremy Grant and Ishmael Kamagates. Um, what are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, it still feels like fair assets for Jeremy Grant. But once again, I have to imagine that the Blazers franchise is disappointed with their results of this season. And I don't think that's really the fault of this trade by any means. It might be evidence that they should have almost gone the opposite route with their trades over the last offseason, tried to gain more future capital for their assets rather than trade assets away for a Jeremy Grant. But he's a talented enough player to deserve it. I just don't know if the Blazers were moving in the right direction there.
Yeah, that's fair. And in my mind, I mean, like you said, I agree. Fair value for Jeremy Grant. But I think if the Blazers aren't able to re-sign Jeremy this offseason, I think it's the Trailblazers lost the trade because that's far too many assets to give up for a 1 year rental when
Yeah.
you achieved nothing. So,
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, we also
all
have
right.
the Cavaliers receiving Donovan Mitchell in a trade that saw Ochai Agboji, Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, a 2025 first, 2027 first, 2029 first, and swaps in 26 and 28. This is a huge package for a genuinely talented player. But it's also an interesting trade just from like the perspective of these last two trades that we talked about. I think that one team sort of made a trade that they probably shouldn't have at the time, whereas I think both of these teams might have moved in the correct direction. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. I would still probably say, and I know Donovan Mitchell is fantastic. I would still probably say the Cavaliers overpaid a little bit just purely based on the sheer number of first round picks, but ultimately it made their team better. I mean, heck, they're the fourth seed in the East this year. They still have a lot of youth on that team around Donovan Mitchell as well, so they will continue to get better and grow. And then on the Jazz, like we talked about earlier, I thought this was a phenomenal trade for the Jazz. This is the perfect trade to try and make when you are wanting to rebuild. You gained yourself some youth. Lauri Markkanen balled out this year and was fantastic for the Jazz. And now they have a absolute horde of first round picks to go out and just continue building that roster. So I think at the end of the day, pretty even, both things considered. I'm sure both teams wound up are happy with how it's come out so far.
Yeah, it's interesting that none of these picks will vest for 3 years. But
Yeah.
it is probably too many picks for this trade. You're right. And
Yeah.
they also own our final offseason trade, at least that we're going to talk about, which is Rudy Gobert being traded to the Timberwolves in exchange for Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Leandro Bolmaro, Walker Kessler, who was the 22nd pick in that draft, Jared Vanderbilt, a 2023 first, 2025 first, 2027 first, 2029 first, and a pick swap in 26. Holy cow. And
Yeah, the Jazz absolutely steamrolled the Timberwolves on this one, and granted, the Timberwolves are in the playoffs this year. Yippee skippy for them, and Rudy Gobert has been good, but still, I mean, the Timberwolves essentially just traded away their entire future to make playoffs probably for the next couple of years, and probably lose in the first or second round of playoffs
I mean, the
every
weird
year
thing
for the
is,
next few years.
I viewed them as a play-in team before this trade, and they're a play-in team now. So I don't really know that. I feel pretty confident in saying that this wasn't worth it.
No, absolutely not. And this was highway robbery by the Utah Jazz, and I mean, good for them. I mean, especially along with that Donovan trade. I mean they're sitting in the same spot the Oklahoma City Thunder are. Maybe not to the quite to the same extent, but ton of first round picks coming the Jazz's way over the next
Yeah,
8 years.
man.
All right. Well, let's move on to the trade deadline trades. With the first one being, and we threw this one in here because I'm a Blazers fan, the Blazers receiving Cam Reddish, Matisse Thybulle, and a first, while the Hornets receive 2 seconds, and V. Mikhailuk, my apologies if I mispronounced that, 76ers receiving Jalen McDaniels in 2 seconds, and the Knicks receiving Josh Hart. Um, what do you think of this one, Jonathan?
Somewhat of not much of a needle mover for both the Hornets and the 76ers. And the Knicks, I think, got a little bit of a boost from Josh Hart. And really, if you look at this trade, the meat of the trade happened between Portland and the Knicks. The others were kind of just throw-in. And I think that the Blazers, with this, started to try to move back in the correct direction of acquire future assets, get off of these guys that are on nearly expiring contracts that won't be around for when we're able to compete again. And the Knicks got a decent enough player in Josh. I don't know if he's necessarily decent enough for the cost of a first, but we've seen first round picks, I think, sort of devalued in the NBA this offseason. We have a lot of trades that we aren't going to talk about, but I almost just left in so that we could just briefly mention them, where guys are like sixth man, seventh man, going for first round picks, which I don't remember from a few years back that being the case.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it might be moving closer to the correct value, though, because you look at a mid to late first round pick, and those usually result in sixth, seventh man. So,
Yeah. All right. Over to our second one here. Raptors receiving Jake Puddle, aka Jakob Pertl, for a first, a second, and then a random player.
yeah, this is another example of that. I guess we did leave one in. I mean, Jake Puddle is he's a good player by all means, and I think he aided the Raptors a little bit this season, but a first and a second is a bit of a high price for a player of his caliber in my mind. Granted, I'm a huge fan of teams who focus on the draft, and so I probably value firsts a little bit higher than I should, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. All right, over to now kind of our first actual big impact trade of the deadline. Lakers receiving D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt, while the Timberwolves receive Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander Walker, and 3 seconds. The Jazz receive Russell Westbrook, Juan Toscano Anderson, Damian Jones, and a 2027 first courtesy of the Lakers. Jonathan, what were your thoughts on this one?
I found it funny that the Jazz were the team that was able to escape with the first round pick in this trade.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like they gave up quite enough to sort of walk away with that. But their GM has shown a little bit of a special talent for getting other teams to just throw in a first round pick to make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we saw a huge impact. It certainly improved the guard play from the Lakers, made them a little bit more dangerous in the playoffs. We'll see how effective that turns out to be tonight. But for the most part, just a somewhat decent trade that's not a huge mover for me.
Yeah. I agree. It definitely helped out the Lakers, and I think it helped out the Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves getting Mike Conley improved their outlook, and then again for the Jazz, just continuing to trade away the players they don't need while acquiring young talent and draft picks.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
2 trades left, and we left the 2 most exciting deadline trades for last. Let's actually skip one real quick and talk about the Kyrie Irving trade. Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris to the Mavericks for Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a 2029 first, and 2 seconds. Evan?
Yeah. I mean, at the time, I don't think anybody anticipated this going so poorly for the Dallas Mavericks. Everyone recognized off the bat that the Mavericks were giving up the large majority of their defensive capability. And then Spencer Dinwiddie is a solid guard. The 2029 first, I mean, sure, that's so far down the line. I'm sure the Mavericks probably don't even care. And then the 2 seconds, their second round pick, so who gives a crap? To me, it's not so much really that the Nets won the trade as it is the Mavericks lost.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, like, it doesn't, like, it's kind of like a meh trade for the Nets. Really all it does is get Kyrie Irving out of their hair, which maybe, sure, that's a win. And then also you clear his salary off of your books. But overall, it was really just the fact that the Mavericks then got Kyrie and crapped the bed for the rest of the season. I mean, I don't really know what else to say.
We talked last week about the negative impact that this trade has had on the Mavericks, and I think that I'm just so surprised looking back at it to see how much was actually given up, because like you said, Spencer Dinwiddie was a big piece on that roster, but I mean, really, you look at it, and they swapped Spencer Dinwiddie for Kyrie Irving, and then paid a couple of nickels extra to make it happen, and they got worse. Like, it's weird to me that this trade, which seems really good on paper, even looking back, I'm like still inclined to say that the Mavericks did well on this trade, and it just completely blew up in their face.
Yeah, it really doesn't make any sense. The matrix is broken. Things aren't working out.
Evan, why don't you go ahead and tell us what this final trade is?
Final one, as I'm sure everyone already knows where we're getting to here, is the Kevin Durant and TJ Warren trade to the Suns, while the Nets received Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and then a whole bunch of picks. We listed out all the other ones, but we'll just say a whole bunch of picks for this. Honestly, win-win. Really, I mean, I think for the Nets, when you have Kevin Durant request the trade, there's only so much you can do. I mean, you're giving up one of the best players on the planet, and they came away with Mikal Bridges, who has shown flashes of being a very talented player. Cam Johnson has looked fantastic as well, and then all those picks will go to good use. Granted, it's the Nets, and we know their propensity with picks, but we won't factor that in for now. And then the Suns, of course, getting Kevin Durant, that's always a win, along with TJ Warren, who's a solid role player on the team. It's boosted the Suns a bit. They're going to be scary here throughout the postseason. So good job on both sides of it, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, 4 firsts and a swap is what picks were exchanged here. Same amount for Rudy Gobert. And I don't think it's much of a debate which of these players has already had a better legacy and is going to continue to be more valuable to their roster. I think it was a win for both teams. Certainly the Suns, though. The Nets, it's a bittersweet win for them because
yeah, exactly.
It's an admission that their plans failed. Their acquisition of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant did not bring them any great success. And so they cut their losses. They didn't even have to trade for either of them, though, because they picked them up as free agents, meaning that it's just a positive at the end of the day. Get some entertaining basketball and then get a lot of draft capital. But it was still, at the end of the day, a little bit of a failure.
Now that we've gone through those trades, let's move on to the play-in tournament. I believe maybe I'm speaking for myself here. I've become a big fan of the play-in tournament. I love the fact that they've added this in. We'll go through each of the games here, just talk about who we see coming out on top. First one here, Lakers versus Timberwolves. Currently, Lakers have the money line at minus 375. What do you think about this one, Jonathan?
I think, is it already 375? I thought that it was better earlier this week. But yeah, it's probably accurate. I don't trust the Timberwolves with their current roster construction. I didn't trust the two bigs approach when they first tried it, and I certainly don't trust it at the end of this season now. I think the Lakers are healthier than they've been most of the season, at least at this point, or they will at least play all of their guys through their injuries to try and make a push, but the Lakers are simply the better team. It's like the gap between the third best team in the West and the seventh best team in the West was pretty small. The gap between the seventh best team in the West and the eighth best team in the West was pretty big.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I see the Timberwolves or the Lakers coming out well ahead in this game. I trust LeBron far more than I do anybody on the Timberwolves. All right. Over to the first game in the East, Heat versus Hawks with a minus 130 Heat money line. Who you got, Jonathan?
You know, I might be regretting this pick right now with the first quarter almost coming to a close with Atlanta up 7 right now. But I think that the Heat should be the better team in this. I think the money line is pretty accurate. And, I mean, Jimmy Butler is enough to offset Trae Young and then some. And then the depth of the Heat, I think, is just overall better.
That's fair. I had two different parlays for this weekend, neither of which is going to show up in our betting segment. One picked the Hawks, one picked the Heat. The Heat are just so weird to me. I think on paper the Heat are absolutely the better team. They've just been so streaky all season long, and I feel like when both teams get hot, the Hawks' potential is greater than the Heat.
That might be
but
true.
With that said, though, I think the money line going into the game was fair, and then hopefully here over the course of the game it will get a bit closer because I think this should be one of the better playing games of the weekend or of the next 2 days.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm excited to get off of this call and watch the rest of it.
All right, fine. That's my subtle little hint for me to speed things up here. All right, so let's get into Bulls Raptors. Minus 225 Raptors money line. Jonathan, who you got?
Raptors. I'm mostly sticking with the money line across this whole thing, but as much as I like the Bulls for stealing a little bit of front office talent as well as coaching talent from the Nuggets, I do not believe that they are ready for playoffs.
Yeah.
They are the 10 seed in the East for a reason. I think that the Raptors struggled a little bit with injuries this season and also just a little bit of cohesiveness. So, but when it comes down to it, when the games matter, I think that the Raptors do hold strong against the Bulls.
Yeah, I agree. Raptors easy. And then the final game in our play-in slate here, Thunder versus Pelicans with a minus 220 Pelicans money line.
Give me the Thunder. I got to go one underdog. Might as well be them. But also, I just think that they are a very well put together team with a lot of guys that play really well off of each other, have a great chemistry that will play they're going to give it their all right now, and especially with the Pelicans not having Zion right now, I think that the Thunder are going to win. My analysis is really shitty right now.
I would agree with you though. I think of all the money lines, although obviously we can't now say the Hawks because we have the benefit of hindsight. But I think going into this, I think the underdog I would have picked would have been the Thunder. Pelicans have some injuries, have looked a little disjointed at times, whereas the Thunder's young core, especially here towards the end of the season, has been heating up and has been looking real good. So I don't think the Thunder can go on any sort of run once they get through the play-in, but
no.
I could see them taking down the Pelicans here.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Question for you now. You might be a little unprepared since this wasn't on our docket, but who do you see winning the second round play-in matchup from each conference? So we've both said we think Lakers and Heat will win their first round, meaning that the Timberwolves will be playing against the Thunder, according to us, and the Hawks will be playing against the Raptors, according to us. Who do you think escapes from those two games?
Man,
these ones are tricky.
I honestly think I think I see the Thunder taking down the Timberwolves in the West. I think again, the Timberwolves are just such a cluster.
Yeah.
Thunder have been heating up. I see the Thunder there. And then in the East, that's probably the closest one. Raptors Hawks is tough.
It's real tough.
I'd probably go Raptors there just purely based off of team experience, honestly.
Yeah, I think so. If FanDuel would have let me bet the play-in bracket, I would have probably done exactly that. But they don't.
Speaking of FanDuel. Now over to our 100 units and 10,000 to 1 segment. This is, of course, our weekly betting segment. Start out with 100 units here. Jonathan, what is your 100 units bet of the week?
I mean, just playing off of that last discussion, I got Heat winning, Lakers winning, Raptors winning, Thunder's winning, plus 814 when I got in. So, it pays 8 to win, 8 to 1, and I think that there's significantly better odds than that, save for maybe the Atlanta Miami game right now. Uh-oh.
I like it. On my end, I went pretty darn simple for my 100 units one. I've been in kind of a lull over the past week, so I'm hoping to just get one on the board. But I had the Knicks over the Cavaliers in game one of their playoff matchup at plus 200, and I put down a quarter of a unit on that. So I think Knicks have been playing very well lately. I think the Knicks have a good matchup against the Cavs, and I think they'll be able to take that first game in Cleveland.
I think that's a great money line to bet on. Plus 200 feels a little bit disingenuous for the state of those two teams, but I do think that the Cavaliers are the better team. I just think that they aren't 3 times as good, which is what that implies.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, over to 10,000 to 1. Jonathan, what absurd parlay have you put together for us this week?
I struggled so much with this one. There's not a lot of parlays being offered right now that I'm really interested in. I decided to just go a little bit crazy and pick. Shit. I decided to pick shit. In the game that's currently going, so I can probably check my status soon, I have John Collins, Kyle Lowry, Kevin Love, and DeAndre Hunter all getting 3 or more three-pointers. Which is, it would take a lot for that to happen, but it would pay a lot. Plus 91,256.
I like it. Shooting for the stars there. Jonathan's trying to get rich quick. But
always
lose all of it to taxes.
All of my quarter unit will be lost.
On my end, kind of in the same boat. I really didn't know what to do, especially now with the Blazers out. I don't really have a stake in the game too much, so I just decided to make a crazy same-game parlay for the team that I probably know the most about, which is the Lakers. So I went ahead and did Lakers money line, Lakers to have the lead after each quarter, and each quarter is an individual bet. LeBron over 6.5 rebounds, Anthony Davis over 8.5 rebounds, Cat over 7.5 rebounds, LeBron over 7.5 assists, Mike Conley over 5.5 assists, Anthony Edwards over 25.5 points, LeBron over 25.5 points, D'Lo over 12.5 points, Austin Reeves over 10.5 points, and Anthony Davis under 13.5 rebounds, which is plus 39,245, and I put a quarter of a unit on it.
Way to go.
That one was a lot of me sitting there on the FanDuel app, just going through that entire same game parlay and thinking, what in the hell could happen tonight?
Well, I am happy to announce that at the end of the first quarter, I have 1 of 12 necessary 3-point made. So I am well on my way to success. I think that's all that we have for today, though. So, Evan, do you have any bold take to send us off today?
Chauncey Billups will be fired within the next 2 months.